Welcome to the Fit 40 podcast, where we take all the confusing, conflicting fitness and nutrition information and break it down so that you can live your healthiest, strongest, most energized life. I'm your host, Brian Fitzsimmons. Let's get it started. All right, welcome back. Back for another fun-filled episode. We got a lot on deck today. We got why certain things you could do to get rid of back pain when you have trouble with squats and deadlifts. We got what is the best diet plan out there and why you shouldn't rely on emotions and the scale during your weight loss, fat loss journey, and what you can do instead that's going to help keep you on track. So before we jump into any of that, I got a hell of a recommendation for you this week, and that is the movie on Netflix, and I just cannot get it out of my head because we just watched it last night, and it's a little creepy, and it was a very well told story. God, I don't know why it's so hard to talk this early. I'm filming at 8 a.m., so this is I apologize ahead of time if it's a little spacey or a little slow, but I'll do my best to keep it at the normal pace. But I See You was kind of crazy. For anybody who's not familiar with what Froggers are, Froggers with a PH, it's this thing where people will live inside other people's homes without that family or those people knowing that they're in there. So they hide in like attic spaces, basements, guest rooms, and they just take little things here and there like food or like a little bit of money here and there and get what they need, and they just live that way. And it's super creepy because if you look it up on the internet and you look up like Frogger caught on tape, there are people that actually do this. And the movie kind of took it and ran with it and told an incredible story about how this crime, this case that this detective was working on, how it intertwines with the people that are frogging in the guy's house. So I'll leave it at that. It's a thriller. It's definitely like got a couple jump scares in there and some crazy stuff. So highly recommend checking it out if that's your jam. If you're more of the type of person that likes the easy watching, the nice calm stuff, then I would say if you want a good comedy and you're into the dry humor side, which I definitely am, I just got into Letterkenny on Hulu, and that's also great. That's a light watch, and it's just something funny to laugh at. And they talk so fast and they're so quick with their responses and their wittiness that you kind of have to really pay attention to catch all the jokes. So we got 2 recommendations this week. But anyway, on to the first matter of business. What to do when we have hip or back pain with squats or deadlifts. Now, I'm going to start by saying I am not a physical therapist or a chiropractor. I would suggest between the two, probably seeing a physical therapist because that's more of a guarantee of quality, and they actually have to take boards that are certified by a centralized body, not just by their school like chiropractors. But that's my tangent on that. If you are in pain, I would see one of those first before doing anything I'm going to talk about, just to rule out anything that's really gnarly, or maybe they would see something that would be worth referring out to a doctor, like an MD, where maybe you got to go get scanned or something for like low back pain, just to rule out anything really bad. Okay, it's always good to just check all your boxes and make sure everything's good. Now, assuming everything is totally fine, we're going to get into the training aspect and what you can do from the perspective of not trying to exacerbate injuries or create injuries. So like, let's take, for example, you've been doing barbell back squatting and barbell deadlifting from the floor, and your back is on fire. Now, here's a couple of things that you can try. So when we change it up, before we go into like the exact details of it all, when we change it up, it usually is a good thing because the barbell was not made for our bodies. It was made to fit those 45-pound plates, which is why most people who do a barbell deadlift off the floor can't keep a neutral spine. Not saying a neutral spine is the end-all be-all and it's the reason that you have back pain, because it might not be. And for a lot of people, it usually isn't. But when it comes to like proper mechanics and moving from the hips at the deadlift, it's usually not that easy for most people to do it correctly. So for that reason, I just want to go into this conversation just knowing that equipment is not made for us. We are working around the equipment based on manufacturing, based on certain factors in the past that made sense that don't make sense now. And yeah, so feel free always to adjust and adapt everything to your personal style, your body, in a way that it feels comfortable and it doesn't feel like you're causing any bad pain. Yeah, that's pretty much the big disclaimer on all of this. So let's talk about it. When we're in back pain, sometimes it can be from that compressive effect of the bar. So let's say we call it axial loading. So if you were standing just straight up, you have an axial load of gravity. So it's like gravity's trying to squish you, kind of like an accordion, like you're being pressed down on. Now, if you got a barbell on your back, that's even more of an axial load, pushing down and compressing your spine. Or if you're holding a deadlift and you're standing up tall and your hands are holding a lot of weight, your shoulders are pushing down and you're feeling that same type of compressive load on your spine. And sometimes that could piss it off. So what we can do instead of that is change it up by taking our hips and favoring one side by doing single leg. So we have our spine and then our hips kind of make like an upside down T. Now, if you go to single leg, it tilts your hips ever so slightly and takes pressure off the spine directly. Now, is there still pressure? Yes, but it's not anywhere near what it is doing double leg versus single leg stuff. Usually, assuming there's not a barbell on your back, because then that's also adding more weight. But yeah, it's the same as dumbbells too. Like you're going to have a little compressive load, but it's not going to be as much, which for some people can help tremendously. So experimenting with things like, instead of doing a barbell squat, like try a reverse lunge or a forward lunge or a lateral lunge or Bulgarian split squat, things like that. And for RDL, instead of doing deadlifting, instead of doing the traditional barbell deadlift, you can try doing things like kickstand RDLs with one foot, or just straight up single leg RDLs where you swing your leg back. Or you could even do hip thrust variations, because hip thrusting is the pretty much exact same movement as an RDL. You are doing a hip hinge. It's just a different way to load it. And especially with the hip thrusts, when we're talking about that axial load on our body where it's pressing down for most of these things like RDLs and squats, when we do hip thrusts or bridges, that eliminates it, because we're now not pressing up and down into gravity like standing up, sitting down. We're now taking our hips backward to forward. So for that reason, we don't load the spine, and the hip thrust and the bridges can be a very good variation for a lot of people. And then you could do that with two legs, or you could also do it with single leg, which is also incredibly challenging and super duper fun all at the same time. Okay, another thing that we could do is change up the variation of what we're doing. So if it's like barbell back squat, for example, which a lot of people have trouble with just because they don't have the shoulder mobility to do it, or the ankle mobility for their knees to go forward far enough so we can maintain a more upright position, which could be the reason that our back is taking a big load from that. Instead, try something like a front squat. So when you go from back to front, what happens is the load being in front of you actually forces you to lean back a little bit more, which results in a more upright posture. So now you don't have the same type of tension on your lower back on the front squat that you do on the back squat, because you have a more favorable angle. You're more upright. Same goes for safety squat bar. So those are the ones where it's got like that U-shaped pad that goes around your shoulders and your neck, and then you're holding the handles kind of like right in front of your chest. What that does is it elevates the bar on your back. And what happens there is the same thing. So the lower the bar sits on your back, the more you're going to have to lean forward. And that's why a lot of powerlifters will do that. They'll put it as low as they possibly can because it's a better leverage for them. And all they care about is getting up or standing up, sitting down in the most like quick way, the easiest way possible so they can lift the most weight. But that's also why a lot of powerlifters are very, very injured at the end of their careers, because they have been doing that style for so long and overloading it to the point where they're pushing performance. But that doesn't mean it's the right way to do it. So you could do things like the safety squat bar, where it goes like pretty much takes the bar from lower middle back to like up near the neck, but it's not in an uncomfortable way because there's padding and stuff like that. Another thing that you could do when it comes to deadlifting is, instead of using the barbell, try the trap bar, because then you don't have to worry about your knees getting in the way of the bar, and you don't have to be in this like super duper hinged position, which is basically your shins are vertical and your butt is back, which for some people, it just doesn't agree with them, and that's totally fine. What the trap bar allows you to do is bring your knees forward a little bit, so it isn't quite a traditional hinge, and it's not exactly a squat either. It's kind of like that hybrid middle between a squat and a deadlift, and that can be a good substitute for a lot of people. What else? We also got RDLs, so you could cut the distance, and in that same category is block pulls or rack pulls. Basically, you just stop the bar at the point where you can handle it without any pain or anything like that, and you can control for the range of motion, because sometimes when it comes to people being in pain, it usually is too much load, too much range of motion, or like a combination of the two. So when you can adjust for that and make sure that you're not going too far into a position where your body cannot handle it, that's always very, very helpful. So it could be worth trying that out. Or if you want to just do regular deadlifts off of like a couple of plates, like a couple of 45-pound plates, even that inch or two off of the floor can help out tremendously. And that would technically be considered a block pull. And last but not least, like I said, it's usually load or range of motion that's the issue. So it could also be that we're just lifting too much weight too quick, because when it comes to our bodies, our muscles and our CNS adapt a lot faster than things like tendons and ligaments, because our muscles get a whole lot more blood flow than the tendons and ligaments do. So for that purpose, they adapt a lot faster, they recover a lot faster. And our central nervous system, that connection from our, like the neuromuscular connection from our muscles to our brain, that gets very good very fast. That's why when you see people that just start working out, they get super strong really, really quickly, because it's not that they're gaining a ton of muscle or bone or anything like that. It's because they're getting better at making those connections. So they're able to express their strength really, really well. But when you do that over time and you add weight too quickly, then those get ahead of tendon and ligament health. And sometimes those tendons and ligaments can get compromised by going too heavy too quickly. And then all of a sudden, like myself, for example, one day you hear pop, or like you'll feel something developing over time. And if you don't address it, it can get bad. So just something to keep in mind, which is a good case for periodization. So if you don't know what periodization is, I highly recommend checking it out. What you do is you come up with, there's a million different ways to do it, but pretty much you rev up and then you take a break and then you do it all over again. So the traditional way to do it is like you do 3 or 4 weeks where you're trying to incrementally add weight and go heavier. And then on that 5th week or 4th week, you do a deload, which is like you do 2/3 of the volume. You don't go quite up to your max, and you give your body that ability to recover and adapt and be stronger for the next phase. Now, if you're just going into the gym for months and years on end, just trying to lift heavier, 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 and never take a break, that's a setup for something like this to happen. So something to keep in mind, because when you take everything that we talked about today, you are going to have less stress on your spine. So if that's the issue, if that's the main issue, it's not the mechanics, it's literally just the amount of pressure or strain on your spine. This could help out a lot. Okay. It'll also help favor your anatomy. So you're not pushing a square into a circle hole. Like, all of us are not made for this equipment. Sometimes we need to figure out how to adjust it to us. It'll also give you a new stimulus for growth. So if you've been doing the exact same program forever, the exact same exercises forever, this could be that little bit of variety that you need that you'll benefit from a lot. It also could help, like if you do the single leg stuff, correct imbalances. It could be a strength thing from side to side from doing nothing but double leg stuff and having that stronger side favor it forever. And that could be the issue. So correcting those imbalances could help a lot too. And then altogether, it's going to help reduce risk for injury. We can't eliminate risk. We can only lower it. So we want to lower it as small as we possibly can by doing the right things that we have control over. So that's pretty much that as far as what it comes to back pain for squats and deadlifts. Now, next is the best diet plan there is. Now, when it comes to diet plans, let me just start by saying this. When it comes to specific, like I'm talking about like a diet plan that says you're going to eat this much chicken, this much rice, this much that, this much of that, it really, they just don't work, because when a lot of people go into a diet, they're like, I just need to know what to eat. Just tell me what to eat and I'll do it. And there's a lot of problems with that. But the biggest problem, aside from the fact that even if you gave somebody the perfect plan, 9 out of 10 people never follow it to a T. Okay. The big issue is that when you're on a diet plan, it's really feeding into the all or nothing mindset. And a lot of people, when they cannot eat exactly what's on that diet plan, will feel like a total failure. And they'll be like, oh, I'm off my plan. Oh, well, if I'm off my plan, I'll just binge today. And then that turns into something gnarly, and we don't want that to happen. So the reason that we want to steer clear of these diet plans mainly is because we don't want to take away the learning component. When you are learning how to eat correctly, diet plans don't teach you shit. They just say, eat this. And yes, will they work if you follow them to a T? Absolutely. But when you're all done with them, where do you go from there? A lot of people just go back to what they were doing beforehand and end up looking and feeling and being in that same place with their body that they were beforehand, if not worse, because a lot of diet plans that are out there are super restrictive and set you up for failure because they put you on such low calories that your metabolism adapts and it slows down. And now you're eating the same quantity of food you were with a slower metabolism. So now you know what happens next. You're going to gain a lot of weight pretty fast if you go back to exactly what you're doing before that. And you might even gain even more weight, which is why we don't want to rely on diet plans. We want to rely on diet strategies. And that helps us learn what to eat in certain situations. Because let's be honest, if you're at a party or happy hour with your coworkers and they're getting a bunch of appetizers and beer and stuff, and you have been sticking to your diet for like a solid month, you're going to be craving that stuff like crazy, and it's going to be impossible not to eat it. Or if you're at like a family party, or say your grandmother or your mom cooks something that you had when you were younger that you really crave. Like for me, it's my grandma's meatballs. I remember going through show prep for bodybuilding, and luckily I had a really good coach at the time who gave me diet strategies instead of a diet plan. But I can't even imagine if I had somebody telling me, oh, you can only eat chicken, rice, and broccoli, and then somebody puts my grandma's meatballs down right in front of me, I'd be like, all right, screw that, I'm eating this. And that's normal. That is human to do that, because delicious food deserves to be eaten. And you can eat that food and achieve the results that you want if you educate yourself, or if you hire a coach that educates you on what exactly to be looking for and what to abide by. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to give you guys certain things that you should be following and trying to learn how to incorporate into your lives to make these results happen and allow you to do it while living your life to the fullest and not holding back and restricting yourself. So when it comes to the first diet strategy, we want a calorie deficit. This can be achieved in many, many different ways, but at the end of the day, we need to eat less than we are consuming. So if, say, that meatball example, let's say I wanted to have like one or two of them and they're about 200-300 calories. Great. If I have a calorie deficit of like 2,000 calories for me because I'm a little bit bigger, like I could maintain my body around like 2,800 calories, maybe like 2,700 calories. So for me, chopping off 500-600 calories would be about 2,000 for me. So just put that into the calculator for the day and then work all the other food around it. It's really that simple. Or let's say if you don't like counting calories, another way to achieve a calorie deficit without having to count every little thing could be an intermittent fasting approach. So let's say that you have like 2 meals a day and a snack during that intermittent fasting window. One of those meals could be that meatball meal. As long as we're sticking to about like 1 plate size of what we're eating, if we stick to that 1 plate for 1 meal out of the day, you're probably still going to be on track. Or let's say you're another good one instead of intermittent fasting and calorie deficit is quality control. So if you eat those meatballs and then the rest of your day, like a Whole30 approach, it's all whole food. If you're eating nothing but whole foods, you're probably in too much of a deficit to begin with. So that can result in losing weight too, as long as the rest of your day revolves around the actual plan that you're on, the one that we want to stick to. I know there's another one in there and I cannot remember it, but because I don't acknowledge the other ones that cut out entire food groups. So we'll just leave it at that. You just got to learn how to incorporate the calorie deficit. And that's like the big one, is learning how to live with a calorie deficit and what you need to do to stay on it while enjoying yourself. And that should take care of itself. But on top of that, here's a couple of other helpful ones. The next one is protein. Every meal should revolve around protein if your goal is to have the best body composition you can and to burn as much body fat as possible, because when you're in a calorie deficit, we need to eat enough protein to hold on to our muscle. If we're losing weight and we're not working out and we're not eating enough protein, more muscle and bone and stuff like that is going to be lost while eating in a calorie deficit. So we want to make sure that we're preserving or even building as much muscle as possible during a calorie deficit. And ideally, we want to get in that ballpark of about 1 gram of protein per pound of lean body mass. Now, a lot of people don't really have access to, say, a DEXA scanner or an in-body scanner or things like that. So knowing your lean body mass, which is the amount of weight that you have on your body if you were to take every little bit of fat off, so pretty much like all your organs, your muscles, your bone, ligaments, tendons, all that stuff, that total number of weight usually is somewhere around what our goal body weight is. Now, the bigger you are, the lower it probably is. Like for somebody who is technically obese, I would just say like go with 50% of your body weight, and that's usually a really good goal. But it really comes down to having a professional kind of figure it out for you for a lot of people. But like, let's say if you're in the I'll give a general example for like somebody that I would work with, say they're like 45 years old, about 180 pounds, and they had kids and they fell off the wagon a few times. They're a yo-yo dieter. We can assume that their body fat percentage is somewhere north of 30, maybe 40%. So like we'll say like 60% of their body weight is lean body mass. So if their goal weight is to go from like 180 to like 140, then I would say 140 is fine. Like 140 is a really good number. Or if you wanted to get technical with it, I mean, I'll break out the calculator here, 180 times 0.6. Yeah, that'd be 108 grams of protein. So for a lot of people, if they could just get over that 100 mark, that'd be great to start. And then you could always add as you go, because protein's one of those things that, assuming that the calories are correct, the more protein you can fit into the equation, the less hungry you're going to be and the more muscle you're going to have. And there's really no upper limit, assuming that you have proper kidney function, because you hear these like crazy stories about people having issues with protein or going to the hospital, but then you find out they had some sort of a issue, like a medical condition where their kidneys are compromised or something like that. So don't listen to the hype. Protein is good for you. Don't listen to Jillian Michaels, who will cherry pick studies to try and sound different. Okay. Protein is incredible for you. Eat more of it. When in doubt, always eat more. And then what was last? And then the last thing would be to find a way to eat mostly whole or minimally processed foods. When I say minimally processed, I say that because in our day and age right now, it's kind of hard to find nothing but whole foods. You can find it and cook it and all that stuff, but let's be real. Most of us live really busy lives. Most of us have every inch of the day something is occupying our time. So sometimes we need to go for a more processed option, which is totally fine. There's nothing wrong with processed foods. It's just that on average, most people overeat processed foods. So that's what really causes most of the issues. But if you can find a way to make the majority of the food that you eat whole or minimally processed, you're going to get all the benefits of those more natural foods, like like for carbohydrates. Those whole foods usually have higher fiber content, and fiber is incredible for your health. Insoluble and soluble do a good job of basically just pushing and cleaning out your entire GI tract, softening up your stool, making sure that everything's good to go. And it has benefits like it helps lower cholesterol, and it also will dull hunger, so it helps with that too. So there's a bunch of benefits to fiber. And on top of all that, not because it just keeps coming to me, when you increase your fiber intake, all-cause mortality risk for certain things goes down too. So there's no reason not to get that into your diet. Another thing that also happens when you eat mostly whole foods is that you get trace amounts of protein, because every single whole food has some protein in it. So if you're eating nothing but whole and minimally processed foods, you could be getting 10, 20, 30 grams of protein just from these trace amounts, not from directly eating lean protein or things like that. So yeah, there's a lot of benefits to that when it comes to trying to learn how to eat for you. Because at the end of the day, when you eat in a way that you enjoy, that fits your lifestyle, and that checks off the boxes, like the calories are right, protein's right, and you're getting mostly real food, that's all that matters. You don't need to really go that much further into that, because a lot of people, the big issue is like when they get frustrated and they don't see the results right away, and then they get away from what they're doing, and then they chase other things, like in the wellness industry, which is one of the biggest scams out there when we're talking about like all these essential oils and all that crap. Or they go to these functional medicine doctors that aren't even real doctors, that I'm not saying all aren't, but there's a very good population of them that really have no idea what the hell they're doing, and they're playing doctor, and they'll tell them, oh, it's an iodine deficiency, or oh, it's this, or oh, it's that. There's always some sort of an explanation on their first visit. So that is a little sketchy, and you don't want to fall into that category, because when we're not nailing these main things and doing what we need to do, we're always looking for what could be a scapegoat. What could be the reason? It's not me. It's not my consistency. It's got to be something else. No, it's because we haven't taken the time to learn how to eat correctly and actually implement it long enough to see results. So if you're looking for that perfect thing, that perfect diet plan, that is what gets you the results. That's what does it, is eating the right types of foods and finding a way to get it done with your life being as crazy or as hectic as it is. And last but not least is, what was it? Oh, why we can't rely on emotions or the scale to dictate what we do during a diet. Okay, now when we're talking about what to look for, like or I'll take it even before that. A lot of people that I talk to, that my member success manager and the Fit 40 group talk to, they seem to always have trouble because they're like, well, this worked for a little bit, but results seem kind of slow, or like, this really didn't work for me, but I did lose weight. And it's like, that's a pretty good sign that we don't have any idea of how to measure progress. And that's a very, very big deal when it comes to any goal that you have. Like when you're in school and you're trying to graduate, you need passing grades, or you need a certain attendance to pass certain classes and to graduate on time. Same goes for weight loss and fat loss. You need certain markers that you look at to see if you're on track and if you're going to graduate. So two of those things that are not on that list are how you feel day to day and the scale weight, because emotions are like waves. They come and go. And for a lot of us, we over catastrophize everything. Like, God forbid somebody cuts us off, like in traffic or anything like that. You could have killed me. Oh my God. And yeah, they could have, but let's be real. It was probably just going to be a fender bender and you would have figured it out. Or when you're doing a diet and you gain 1 pound overnight and you're like, oh my God, I'm going backwards. I'm so off. Like I'm failing at this. I'm terrible. I can't do anything right. That is over catastrophizing, and it happens all the time. And it's honestly, it's one of those things that's human. I do it all the time too. But eventually you got to learn and say, hey, I'm full of shit. I'm being a big baby, and say, this is not true based on these data points. And that's what we need, are those data points. And one of those is not weight, because our weight fluctuates. There is nobody on planet Earth that stays the exact same weight every single day, every single year. That's not how our bodies work. We're always fluctuating between, like, say 3 to 5 pounds, or if you're heavier, it's even more than that. So there are some people who are like over 200 or 300 pounds that will fluctuate 5, 10 pounds a day. And that's due to a million different things. It could be that you like have to drop a number 2. It could be the fact that you ate late at night and the food is still not digested, or like you finally ate carbs for the first time and now your muscles are tapped out on glycogen, which is a good thing. But people think, oh, I did keto and I ate a carb and now I'm fat again. But that's not how it works. It's just how your body stores things. And nothing I've mentioned so far is fat. None of it. And the name of the game is fat loss, not weight loss. That's why I rely on these specific measurements that we're going to talk about for my clients, because a lot of times we'll see the weight scale. Just we have like graphs and things like that where it goes up and down, and we have no idea, like, not that we have no idea, but it's going up and down and it looks like nothing's happening. And then we go to other things and we're like, oh, there is a lot of progress being made. So let's start with the big one, okay, which is body measurements. The more and more I use these, the more and more that I compare them compared to weight and everything, the more I'm like, I just want to toss the scale completely, because the scale doesn't tell us shit compared to these measurements when it comes to fat loss. Like, for example, I had a client that I was looking at, what was it? It was yesterday. And if you look at her weight chart, you would think, wow, this person really hasn't made any progress whatsoever in the past 6 months. Like, they're kind of the same weight. What did they do? And then you look at the body measurements and she lost 6 inches on her hips. 6 inches is huge. Like, every inch is a very big deal. So that's a difference of like multiple pant sizes. So these body measurements tell us so much more. And when I take people through a reverse diet and we go through that phase of metabolic restoration that we do in the beginning of their journey, when we're adding more and more calories, people are freaking out like, oh my God, I'm gaining weight. Oh my God, I'm gaining weight. And I'm like, okay, totally fair. And that's normal, because now, again, your body is filling up with more fluid, more glycogen, not necessarily fat. And then I'm like, listen, why don't we just check the body measurements just to see, make sure we're not putting on any body fat? And I've had people come back to me and say, somehow my inches are lower, but I'm gaining weight. And I'm like, so you're burning body fat and you're gaining weight. So what's that weight? And they're like, well, probably muscle. And I'm like, yep. And that's what we want. Like, especially in that phase, the metabolic restoration phase that we do, the goal is to prime you for fat loss. And the more muscle that you have, the easier it is to burn body fat, because muscle burns a lot of calories at rest, which is great. It requires us to do absolutely nothing but just exist. So, and preserve that muscle with that protein that we talked about and through working out. So body measurements can be a huge, huge help. And I would recommend, if the scale puts you in a negative place mentally for the entire day, if you have a bad weigh-in, ditch the scale completely and just update your measurements at like once a month, and just do that, because it'll keep you in a much better place. Next is biomarkers. This one is one that a lot of coaches are aware of, but a lot of the general public don't really keep tabs on. And I do this every single week with my clients. We go over everything. So the one that I follow that gives me the most useful information is what's called SHMEC. It's kind of like a shorthanded way of keeping track of hormonal health and other things. And basically what it stands for, it's SHMEC, SHMEC. It's sleep, hunger, mood, energy, and cravings. And for some people, you can throw libido in there too, because that's also a very good tell. Especially if you're deep in a diet and your libido is gone, that's usually not a good place to be. That's a good sign that certain hormones are probably off. So, not to say you have to go to the doctor and say, fix my hormones. It's, let's adjust your lifestyle and figure out ways that we can help, because a lot of those markers do revolve around sleep. So for example, like if your hunger is through the roof and you had 4 hours of sleep the night before, that's probably why. Or if your mood is all over the place, again, that could definitely tie back to sleep. It could also be environmental. It could be that you're at work or your family's driving you nuts or anything like that. And then energy, that's pretty self-explanatory. If you don't sleep, you don't really have enough energy. And cravings too. Cravings go through the roof, because when you are sleep deprived, your frontal lobe is fatigued, and that center, that's the decision-making center. You're not going to make the best decisions for you. You're going to make the best decisions for your mood in the moment, which is usually those comfort foods. And this is why a lot of times, especially with my population, the moms 40 plus that may or may not be approaching menopause, in menopause, or after, when their sleep is impacted, all of these things get affected, which is why so many people are like, oh, ever since I hit menopause, I just can't stop gaining weight, or I can't lose weight at all. It's because sleep is a very big thing that's affected when that time comes, and that affects all the other things, which results in overeating. That's why we have so much trouble losing or just keeping from gaining weight in general. So you want to make sure that those things are in check, and you also want to have strategies to help with things like that. Like sleep is one of those things that we talk about. I can't even tell you, like probably on a weekly, if not like every other day basis in the messenger with my people. So sleep is a very, very big thing. And you want to keep track of all that other stuff too. Because if your sleep is great and that other stuff is off, then we got to dig a little deeper and find out why. And then last but not least is progress pictures. And I'm not saying to take pictures every single day, because you're not going to see a damn bit of difference. I would say like every maybe 6 to 8 weeks, take progress pictures and make sure that they're the exact same picture. Like you are in the exact same clothes, in the same spot, same time of day, so that way you have a true comparison. It's not, oh, I took a selfie in the mirror, let me compare that to when I had my arms out straight from the side. It's not going to tell you a damn thing. So make sure that we have 3 different spots. You have yourself facing the wall, you have yourself facing the camera, and then you have yourself sideways. And when you're sideways, it helps having your hands forward, kind of like you're about to do a dive off the diving board. And then doing that over time, you're going to start seeing little areas where it's different. And just make sure that the scale is the same too. Like you don't want to be too close one time and too far back on the other, because if you're closer, you're going to look bigger. If you're further back, you're going to look smaller. So make sure that it's as close to identical as possible. Okay, and when we have these actual reliable markers to compare, then we can make educated decisions on what to do next. And notice this stuff is not week by week. This is months. So if you're getting all not hot and bothered, but like if you're getting all flustered and like feel like you're about to lose your mind every single week, then that's the problem. It's not a weekly thing. It's a monthly, if not yearly thing, because this is a patience game. And if you are not a patient person, then you need to either hire somebody or find a friend who will keep you mentally on track, because that's usually what is the reason most people fall off and are stuck. It's not because they're on the wrong plan. It's not because what they're doing isn't working. It's because they're just not patient. And that is the biggest nail in the tire for a lot of people. So if you're not patient, again, find somebody to keep you in check. I know I used to be that way. Like when I was getting ready for that bodybuilding show, I would try to do it on my own. And it, like every week, it's like I was changing the plan and it didn't end up serving me very well. Then I hire a coach that's basically like, don't stress, just stick to the plan. It'll all work out. And then what do you know? I end up looking better, feeling better, and performing better. And that's usually how it goes for a lot of people. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. Patience is the name of the game. Stick to the plan and then use the correct data markers to make decisions going forward. So I hope that you guys got a lot out of this. I know I was excited to film it because these are such good topics that I love talking about. But if I didn't elaborate enough and you have more questions, always feel free to reach out to me over Facebook Messenger, Instagram, or any of those, email, whatever. And if you found this super helpful and you know somebody that is in your head right now and you're like, yeah, they could probably use this, go ahead and send it their way. That's the only way that this podcast grows, and you guys were incredible at it last year. Put us in the top 15% of most shared podcasts. So let's keep that good momentum going. Send it out there and let's grow this thing, because this is the information a lot of people need that a lot of people don't have. So send it out. I appreciate it ahead of time. Hope everybody has an amazing week. I will see you. Let's see, this is going out on Monday. So I will be back on Thursday with another podcast. Make sure to look out for it. But in the meantime, go kick some ass. I'll see you later. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode and you're a new listener, go ahead and hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss another episode. And if you're a returning listener, I would love your feedback. If you could take 2 seconds to just leave a quick review on iTunes or Spotify and rate the show, that would be greatly appreciated. So thank you in advance and have a great rest of your week.